Hola a todos y a todas. Buenas tardes. Yo soy Karen y estáis en la primera sesión de KidsCorner de este año 2021. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Yo soy Karen, como he dicho, y soy la responsable de la formación de profesores en una academia de inglés que se llama London School en Donosti, San Sebastián, en País Vasco. También soy tutora de Celta, que es el título más prestigioso del mundo de la enseñanza de inglés de Cambridge. Entonces, que hoy vamos a hablar de la enseñanza del inglés a los más pequeños, a los de infantil. Lo voy a hacer en inglés, pero cualquier duda o cualquier pregunta ya me puedes hacer en el chat la pregunta tanto en español como en inglés. O sea que no hay problema, me puedes explicar o si por si hay alguna duda por lo que he dicho, pues no hay problema, me puedes hacer la pregunta en inglés o en español. Bueno, ya vamos a empezar. In English, let's start. Okay, so I will share my screen. Okay, guys, so we are going to be talking today about teaching English to very young learners. Why did I decide to do a webinar about this? Because often people think that it is very, very, very easy to teach English to very young learners, okay? But actually, I think this is not true at all. People think that it's much more difficult to teach English to older children, teenagers. But actually, with our very young learners, there are so many more factors which can make it difficult, developmental, linguistic factors, which make it much harder. And so sometimes what happens is when we are told to teach English to very young learners, it can be very difficult and we don't know where to start. There is also much more material for older learners for the learning of English. And so it can be a little bit difficult and challenging to know where to start with this. So hopefully what I'm going to do today is give you my best advice, my top tips on how to deal with English in the very young learners classroom. Okay, let's start. So before we begin, who are we? Okay, so we are London School Teacher Training. There are three of us. Okay, so we have Inigo, Alex, and me, Karen. And the three of us dedicate ourselves to teacher training, both within our school plus to external. So we do conferences, webinars. We do teacher training in primary, secondary, and we really do love what we do. And so that is how we started and how we mean to continue to give the best teacher training that we can and hopefully make your lives easy. All right, so my first question, how do we define very young learners? Okay, because within English teaching, there are so many different kind of acronyms and so many different terms that we use, but how do we define VYLs? Okay, so the age group here, which is why you are here in this session, is pre-primary. So here we've got the infantil age, 1 to 5 years old. As we know, more and more students are learning English and they are younger and younger. I notice this in my day-to-day. I have many more students who are 3, 4, 5. And so parents are a lot more aware that their children need to learn English from a younger age. And within schools, so within infantil, within primary, there is a lot more focus now on either bilingual education or a big focus on English. And so as teachers, we need to make sure we are prepared for this. And we can do our best with these very young learners. One thing to share with you, once I asked one of the teachers that I worked with how he would define very young learners, and he said, people who don't know they need the toilet until they've actually been, which I thought was very funny. So the difference here is one of the things, we've got these developmental factors. So with children that are 3, 4, and 5 when they're learning English, it's not just the fact that they need to learn the language. There are other factors that a teacher needs to take into account when delivering these classes. What are some of the other issues we can face? Okay, so the biggest challenges when teaching English to this age group. Okay, so I want us just to think about this. Okay, so think about, why am I in this webinar? What do I think the biggest problems are when teaching English to this age group? I've come up with a few ideas. Let's see if they're the same as what you were thinking. So the first thing, obviously, they have very little knowledge of English. We are starting from 0, okay, with these guys. Very little knowledge of English. Some will know a little bit more if they are exposed to English outside of the classroom. Maybe their parents are good at English, they speak to them at home. But in general, we're looking here at really 0 that we have to build up from with this age group. They are not able to produce a lot of language. This is true for their first language and their second language. Okay, so let's not forget that when they're learning English at this age, they're also learning their own language. And so language production can be limited. But remember, receptively, our students can understand a lot at this age, and we need to keep this in mind. As we said before, toilet troubles, we know this happens with our students in infantil, can disrupt the class. You have some people going off, I need the toilet. So sometimes our classes at this age can be very disrupted by little things. It can be stop-start very often. They have a shorter concentration span, which means we need to choose activities which will be relevant for their age group. It can be said that younger students, their concentration span matches the years of their age. Okay, so imagine someone is 3, we shouldn't have activities that last longer than 3 minutes. So what you can see here is that with students of this age, we need to make sure that there are short parts of the class and we don't leave things to go on for a very long time. Very high energy levels. So often students come in and there's so much energy and we have to make sure that we use this well. So not just letting things get out of control, but using this well so that they can learn the most language and play with it a little bit. Differing levels of development. This is one of the most difficult things, I think, as a teacher when you're teaching a language, especially a second language. You've got some students within the same class who are very good at reading and writing, others who are really struggling, for example, holding their pen, and some who are just kind of in the middle or don't really want to do it. So what we've got here is we've got differentiation, and it's difficult to teach the same to all of those students and make sure that they all benefit in the same way. So this is one of the biggest challenges. As we've mentioned, there is little knowledge of English, and so instructions can often take a lot of time. One of the problems here. And here their behavior is also guided by emotions. They might not want to speak that day. They might want to sit down. They might not want to do anything. And we know this with everything that we're teaching with very young learners. But when it comes to English, I think speaking and having the confidence to speak in another language and to interact in that language can be quite difficult for children at first. So we have to understand that maybe some days they just won't feel like it. And we have to maybe adapt what we do to fit that. Okay, so in this webinar, I'm going to be giving you 15 tips. Okay, so the next 15 slides you'll see are 15 tips that I wish I had known when I started teaching English to very young learners. And after teaching for a number of years and teacher training and speaking to teachers that have students of this age, these are all the things that I have acquired and things that I wish I had known at the beginning. And so I thought I would share it with all of you. As well, we're going to see some videos of what I'm talking about in action. Okay, so we recorded some classes with some young learners. They're around 5 and 6, these age groups, so ever so slightly older than the 3 to 5 year olds, but everything is still very relevant. And so I think it's really important to see what you've got in class alongside what I'm telling you, to see how it works and how students interact with each other in this situation. Okay, so my top tip, number 1, okay, always respond with enthusiasm. Students want to communicate with you, okay? Very young learners, especially, they just want to communicate. They are finding their voices. They are finding their voices in their first language, and they are also finding their voices in the second language, which we're teaching them. And for them, this is amazing. Communication is like, wow, I can speak to these people. I can tell them all these things that I have done. And the teacher is one of the figures who has main kind of contact with these children at this age. And so they just want to tell you everything. Okay. And they love being listened to, okay, because they like to speak, they like to interact, whether this be in English or not. Even if their news is nothing of particular interest to you, for example, a cat or some uncle or cousin's birthday or whatever, respond with enthusiasm, okay? When they come in and they tell you something, obviously always try and promote them saying something in English, but respond with enthusiasm and respond in English, okay? It's especially important if they show you something they have done, okay? Maybe they've made something for you. Maybe they've brought you something in. Responding with enthusiasm will increase their confidence and will make this connection much stronger, so that they feel more confident to communicate with you in English when the time comes. So enthusiasm here on the teacher's part is really, really important. Okay, tip number 2. In classes of English, you must make time for downtime, okay, especially with these very young learners. It's as important for you, the teacher, as it is for the student. You can't be productive, and children that age cannot be productive all the time, okay? A lot of this is going to be receptive. So downtime enables you to just take it down, to settle the students, and to maybe deal with more receptive skills. You can't expect them to be producing all the time, because they will get tired, as we said, with the concentration spans. It can be quite short too. So don't try to make your students produce for a whole, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, or however long the lesson is that you're going to do. Make sure there is time for downtime. Too much stirring. So stirring is when we do activities that are all high energy. Will lead to over-energetic students and an eventual lack of control. So we must make sure we stir, so increase energy, and also settle, which decreases and calms students down. And our lessons should be a mixture of stirrers and settlers. So some ups and some downs to avoid that kind of high energy. I've seen teachers before make the mistake of just having lots of high energy activities in English, lots of speaking, lots of flashcard games, lots of everything. This will just tire the teacher and will tire out the students. So you need to make sure that you have the ups, but also the downs. Okay, movement. We all know that movement is so important for our very young learners, okay? So we must make sure that the activities that we choose in our English classes are kinesthetic, okay? Children learn language through playing, through interacting with it, through interacting with things that they see, things that they touch. And this is how they're learning their first language. So their second language shouldn't be any different. They love touching everything, of course, but we need to make the most out of this. As much as possible, make activities as touchy obviously not a word, I invented it, as touchy as possible. Okay, so try and take the activity, if you're using a course book or whatever, take the activity out of the book and make sure that you adapt that to make it kinesthetic if you can. Okay, so flashcards, put them around the room and kids have to go and play something. They have to point to things, they have to raise things, they have to stand up, they have to sit down. Okay, making these activities kinesthetic will mean the students will learn through doing, and that's much more memorable for them. So the ideas here, move around the classroom, get them to cut something out, use puppets, realia, so things that you bring in from outside of the class, anything that you've got, make sure that the students can touch it, can feel it, can play with it, because language is something that is used and is active. So I'm going to now show you a video in which a phonics activity has been used in a kinesthetic way. Okay, so we all probably know about the use of phonics to teach children how to read and write in English. Absolutely fantastic. But there's ways to make this extremely kinesthetic. So I'm just going to show you a short video of how to make a phonics a simple phonics identification activity as kinesthetic as possible here with our 5 and 6 year olds. Okay. Okay, here we go.
Words. Ay, ay, ay. Fly swatter, set the back. Careful, Markel and Adur, just in case they hit you with the fly swatters. Okay? Ready? Only everybody. Everybody looking at the front. Ready? Goat. Both round. Goat. Round. So, bye-bye.
Me.
Next. Ready? Andrea, at the back. Behind them, please. Thank you. Free. Uh-oh. Bye-bye. Markel. Free. Ready? Gain. Very good. Bye-bye, Adur. Very good.
Okay, so a short activity there which uses fly swatters. Fly swatters to identify. They hear the sound, they hear the word, and they have to swat the sound. Okay, so a way of making an easy phonics identification activity as kinesthetic as possible. They have to move, they're standing up, it's very quick, it's fast-paced, they move around a lot. And so this is a great way of increasing your kinesthetic nature of your lessons, your English lessons with very young learners. Okay. Okay, so my next tip here then, guys, is be consistent with routines. As we know, routines are really important for our very young learners. And routines in English class are particularly important because it helps consolidate certain classroom phrases that the students will hear throughout their English learning career. Things like sit down, take out your books, take your pencils out, put things away. And so routines have to include this routine language, which the students should hear, and they will continue to hear and will start to associate that with what they have to do. So it's important to maintain routines that you set from the beginning of the school year. So within those routines, you have that language, and that language continues, and it's always the same, just so they can hear it and identify it. Add to these routines. So as students learn new language, maybe new questions, new phrases, you can add to them, but don't deviate from them. Okay, otherwise students will get confused, and it could lead to lack of control when students get confused and they just don't want to do it. So familiarity, especially in language, makes very young learners feel safe in class, and they will soon tell you if something is wrong. As you know, if you have a very clear routine and as a teacher, you forget one part of the routine, and they're like, no, you do this or you do that. Okay, so with the routines, they will soon tell you if you are wrong. Okay, and they also like to tell you when you're wrong. So yeah, keep your routines, make sure they are set from the beginning of the year. And kind of alongside this, my next top tip is repetition of tasks and task types. Okay. As we said, instructions for certain tasks can be quite laborious. So repeating the same task type means that instructions are kept to a minimum. If you keep the same task type and just change the language, what you do then is you spend the time in class focusing on the language and the practice of the language rather than having to repeat the instructions and wait for the students to understand. If students are familiar with the task, of course, there will be less confusion and more practice of the language. So it's really important that if we have a set of tasks, we continue to use them. Students will feel comfortable, they'll know what to do, and they'll be able to follow the class. And again, our class can be much more fast-paced. The first couple of times you do it, it might be slower, but as you go throughout the year and the students become more confident and more familiar with the tasks, you will find that they'll be like, yep, I got it. And they're able then to just use the language more effectively within that task. Okay, so another video now. So I'm going to show you a video of...
So I'm going to shuffle the words.
Okay, a video of an activity which uses different vocabulary items, okay? And then categorizing this vocabulary. It could be quite confusing, I imagine, for the students the first time. But within this is at the end of the school year. These students know exactly what they're doing, and the practice then can just be done on identifying the vocabulary and reacting accordingly. Okay, so I'm going to show you the activity now. And just see, there's very little setup of the activity, and the teacher can just go straight to the actual activity itself, and the students are completely comfortable with it. Okay, so let's play.
Only English. Ready? So colors, numbers, yes, and then actions, animals, and when I say your name, clap. Yes. Ready? Ready on? Yes. Okay. Blue. 11. 20. Turn around. Touch the floor. Jump. Axel. Good.
And so the students are absolutely fine. All she did was a little review of the activity and the actions the students have to do at the beginning, and you can continue this and use this every class, but using the different vocabulary that you've learnt. So you can include it as part of your routine, but here repetition of task types is the most important thing, and we don't have to use the instructions, and the children are much happier. So having fewer task types but using them more often is the key for activities with English with very young learners. Okay, back to the screen. Next tip, be flexible. Okay, obviously I have my Bitmoji, love my Bitmoji of yoga. But here we're talking about being flexible in terms of what to expect in class. Okay, with very young learners, you never know what you're going to get. Okay, they might come into the class feeling super energetic, so you work with that. They might come into the class feeling quite tired if it's hot or raining. So you need to mix up the task depending on how the children are feeling. And this is including the pace. If they come in and they are quite tired, lethargic, slow the pace down. Okay, they'll thank you for it. You can have a chill lesson. You can have a lesson in which you do some drawings, you do some songs, you do something that's maybe letter formation practice, things which are slower pace, which will suit the emotions of the students on that day. Likewise, if the children are in a silly mood, just go with it rather than letting it get you down. If the students are like, ha, 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 laughing, then be silly with them, okay? They love it when you join in with them, when you dance, when you laugh with them, okay? So if they're in this mood, you have to adapt yourself as well to that. So making sure that you reflect what you want the students to be. And importantly, we always have to have an idea up my sleeve if things go quicker than planned to avoid dead time, okay? Maybe this is an activity that I could do with flashcards. So always having flashcards ready and prepared. Having maybe some colouring activities that you could give to your students, some matching activities with cards, having things up your sleeve and ready in case things go quicker, or at certain activities, they don't go to plan. Another really essential element of your classes in English with very young learners is to focus on question forms. With older learners, with children, older teenagers, okay, one of the big problems that they still have in English is question forms. It's a problem which seems to torment students from the very beginning of their English learning until the very end. And so we need to start incorporating this into our classes of very young learners. What do I mean by this? So here, the question forms are key to helping very young learners improve their use of English in class. It's one of the ways that we can increase their active use of English as well. Okay, so if a child asks something in the L1, okay, so their first language, always drill. So drill is just getting them to repeat, and ask them to repeat it in English. The repetition will mean they are much more likely to use the question form in the future. Regardless of whether you understand them, you need to make sure that they ask you it in English. Okay, so instead of them saying, ¿me puedes dar? ¿Puedo ir al baño? They're like, no, can I go to the toilet? Can I have? Okay, including the intonation, making sure that they repeat it, they say it. Once they say it correctly, they get what they want. So, yes, you can, or here you are. And just this repetition. And as teachers, even though we understand what they are saying and what they are asking, we have to insist on them using the question forms in English, okay? Can be very, very short. So the can I have. Remember, they don't need to understand what they are asking. All they need to understand is this can I have, can I go, can I do, is going to get them what they want and is helping them in English. And this repetition will increase the habit and will make sure that they can then use this more productively and accurately as they go through the years and as they grow up. All right, next, gestures. Okay, so we know that with language, students might not understand what we're saying, but they'll be able to make the connection with what we're doing with our hands. And so gestures in language teaching for very young learners is one of the most effective things you can do to increase comprehension and to increase understanding. Okay, so listen, repeat, look, okay? We know that we have to use our hands, we have to use our bodies, okay? We also have this kind of a theory, which is TPR, if you've heard of it, total physical response. So in which things that we say all have an action. So if we're talking about certain animals, we might do an action which refers to that animal, or where, certain question words, okay? Me, you, us. And so everything that you do should have an action. This will mean that if students don't understand you, they can see and hear what you're saying, and they're like, oh, I think the teacher means this. And so little by little, they go building their understanding. Okay, gestures are the way that very young learners learn by association. Okay, and this is how they learn their first language. They learn by seeing something, listening to the word, and associating the two. and then repeating it. And so the second language learning shouldn't be any different. Use gestures for everything and make sure students are looking at you when you do them. Important, because gestures don't mean anything if your students aren't looking at you. So make sure there is a signal that you have for the students to say, oh, hi, or like a bell or a tambourine or something, okay? And encourage the students to use gestures too. So the more you do them, the more the students will use them too. And so little by little, they connect that gesture that they're doing with what they need to say. And so the words will come after the gestures. So extremely, extremely beneficial in the development of language here. Next, we need to celebrate small victories with our students, okay? With very young learners, we cannot expect big, big, big changes, but little by little, we will see them getting more confident, them being able to do something that they couldn't do the previous lesson. And as teachers, we need to look at this and celebrate it with them. Things like being able to sit on your chair, holding your pen correctly, opening your book to the right page. These are all examples of little victories for our very young learners. For example, I have a student and she's 4, and last year she struggled so much with finding the page. It was like a big problem. I would write the page number, we would say the page number, and she would just be like, I can't, and she would get quite stressed. This year, little by little, I help her a little bit more. And she's finally getting there. And I'm like, yay, well done. And she seems very happy with herself. So these little victories we need to celebrate. And you think finding the right page is something small, but for her, that's a big deal. So celebrate when students do something they couldn't do before. It could be something if you're doing phonics, or kind of motor skills with pen holding or letter formation. You did this much better today. Well done. Okay, and the students, you can see their little faces light up. So make sure that we praise, but praise for something that they are doing better. Next, maintain a high active use of English. Okay, our lessons of English, especially at very young learners' age, should be high English use. Okay, should be a lot of English. Of course, it's important for the students to know that they can talk to you in the first language if they need to, okay, because something might happen, but on the teacher's part, it should be a very high active use of English. At this age, children understand much more than they can produce, okay, 5-10 times more than they can produce in the second language, they can understand. So it's important that they are in an English-rich environment. And this is the way they're going to pick things up. They listen, they focus on the way that you say things, they repeat what you say, they mimic you as well. And so the English-rich environment here is the contact that they need. VYLs will or may only be able to speak to you in their L1, but always speak back to them in English so they get used to the sounds and the typical responses. Things like if the student says something to you or tells you something, you repeat, oh, so you went here with your dad. Oh, that's so nice. Well done. And they're like, yes, okay. They understand much more. Always repeat it back to them in English, what they've said to you, okay? Our favorites with very young learners and English: chants, songs, and rhymes. Anything catchy is great for very young learners, so we need to make the most of this. We've got the books maybe, or things we can find online, but using songs or other routine songs or chants on a regular basis is what is going to get you through these lessons. And students love it. I had a song the other day from the book that students loved so much, they asked me to play it 5 times. And they were equally as excited the 5th time we played it. I was like, are you sure that we want to hear it again? They're like, yes. So yeah, they just love them and they sing along, and you hear them singing this song as they leave the lesson. So it's really important that we increase this. On a language level, why? Okay, they practice pronunciation, they practice intonation, and all of those little things that they practice, also the listening, the rhymes, everything that we're trying to teach them, it all comes together when we're looking at songs, chants, or rhymes. Little things, for example, that you say regularly in class into a chant. So one of my favorite ones at the end of the class is put your books in your bag, put your books in your bag. Make things into a rap. Students love it, okay? And then now at the end of class, it's so embedded into the routine that they start singing it before me. They're like, put your books in your bag. So there we go. Routines, anything that you can do, make it into a song, much more effective. So we're going to watch another short video now of our students singing a song that they have in their course book. Okay, and you can see how we can incorporate the vocabulary, the actions, and everything, how it goes into it too. All right, so next video.
Only English. Ready?
Okay, next video. So here are our students singing the Maskman song, one of my personal favorites.
Numbers, very good accent. Now, ready on? Stand up for Maskman song. Yes? Yes, let's see how we do it.
Sing the song.
Look at Hugo dancing. Unai doesn't want to dance. Maskman song. Do the Maskman song. Let's all do the Maskman song. Andrea, come on. Let's all do the Maskman song. No? Ride a bike. Good. Very good, Alas. Play tennis. Oh. Hit the ball, eh? Basketball, bounce the ball. Good. Play.
Okay, so you can see here we've got actions plus the Maskman song. They've got little masks on as well, so you can get them into the characters, the routines of the book as well, and students absolutely love this. Okay, so use chants and songs to your benefit. Okay, next, make it visual. Okay, so we can see that students learn from seeing, and we've said this before. Much like our gestures, visual association is key for very young learners when acquiring language. It's also important that we don't hide the written form of the word from the students. Often with this age, people just say, oh, it's fine. They can hear it. They can, produce it. They can see a picture of something. But they do need to see the word as well. Otherwise, when it comes to starting to read and write, seeing the word and knowing what the word is, so what it sounds like, the two things are not going to have any connection. So it's important as well that even though these students are just learning to read and write, the actual form of the word is clear and it's there from the beginning. Make your lessons visually appealing and ensure you use visual support throughout with very young learners. Okay, there has to be a strong connection with what they see, what they hear, what they produce. And eventually those connections in their brain will mean they can use that language and produce it independently. So making it visual, absolutely. Okay, train students to be good learners. Remember, we're teaching them English, but we're also training them how to be good learners. And so we want them to be good English learners as they develop and as they grow up. Good learning habits are developed, as we know, in these early years. And good study habits and good habits in terms of language acquisition, how to remember things, are all developed at this age. We need to train our very young learners to be good learners little by little. We can't expect big changes. This could be something as simple as bringing a pencil case, sitting correctly on the chair, raising your hand, responding correctly to a question, knowing how to open my book. All of these things are learning how to be a good learner, how to interact with the course book, for example. So knowing what to do with it, knowing where to put it on my table. All of these things are training them to be good learners. We need to treat them as the learners that we want them to become in the future. Okay, one of, I think, the most important tips for me as a teacher, and when I learned this, I found it much, much easier to deal with very younger learners. Don't always do it for them, okay? It's always tempting as a teacher if someone is slower or someone takes a longer time to do something and everyone else is there, it's much more tempting to do it for them. But we shouldn't do this. Very young learners can always do more than we think they can. If they find something difficult and you do it for them, they're never going to learn how to do it for themselves. Okay, so in my case of the page turner, I would never actually take her to the page. Maybe I would take her within 10 pages and make her do the rest. If you take them to just the edge of where they need to be, but always make them do that final push, okay, then they realize, I need to do it actually. She's not going to do it for me. Prompt them or give them a little bit of help and always encourage them to be independent, okay? We want to create these independent learners. All right, have fun and show you care. So this is my tip number 15 of 15. So have fun and show you care. Really important for very young learners. Very young learners can come out with some hilarious comments and be great fun in class. Make sure you react to this, okay? If someone tells you something or they tell a joke or something funny that happened to them, like one of my students told me that her dad wears pink underpants, and I was like, that's really funny. Make sure you react to it and show that you care. Make the most of this and laugh with them. They will leave with a feeling of shared enthusiasm and joy, which will lead to a positive learning environment. And remember, so much of language learning is feeling positive about yourself, feeling confident in that group, feeling confident that if you say something, that is going to be taken well. And then you feel more comfortable making mistakes and just trying and taking risks. So it's all about creating a positive and inclusive classroom environment. Okay. Couple of minutes left. We're just going to talk about using the course book. Okay, so with very young learners, often we have course books. It's difficult to know exactly what we can do with it, what we can supplement it with. So little things that we need to know. First thing, what does the course book include? Okay, these are the common things that I'm going to write now, which a very young learner's course book includes, okay? If you don't have all these things with your course book, it's time to go to your director or your head teacher or whatever and say, hey, where are all these things that come with the course book? Because they do come with them. You just need to sometimes find them in the school. So student's book, sometimes the student's book comes with the activity book for very young learners. It's not separate. The teacher's book. So this gives you the information about what to do. The teacher's resource book gives you some extra activities. Online material. So this is very, very important. And nowadays, online material for very young learners course books is amazing. The active teachers that you can find, they have routine boards, they have the flashcards, they have the songs, the videos, the stories, everything there. So if you've got a projector, it works really, really well. And online material is fantastic for this age group. Online games and activities as well. So there are plenty which come with the course book. Audio tracks, important for our songs. Flashcards, word cards. So often you have the flashcards and then the written form of the word, which comes separately. You sometimes get a puppet. Okay, so we said with these, they have characters. So you'll get the character puppet, which can be good for role play, good for kind of questions and answers. And sometimes you also get a big storybook, which is great for some of those settler moments when you get the students to sit on the floor. You can read from the big storybook. Really, really good moments of the class here. So plenty of things. You don't need to often look elsewhere to find material to use for very young learners. But if you need to, all those extra things that you keep up your sleeve just in case things don't go to plan, these are the kind of things that you could do. Flashcards. Okay, so besides the flashcards you get with your course book, I always have a box of flashcards with regular vocabulary. So things like colours, clothes, numbers, food. These just regular vocabulary points that if I need to at the beginning, at the end of a lesson, I have the flashcards ready and we can do a few flashcard activities. The extra resources teacher's resource book, as we've said, has some great things in it. So make sure that you look at that and see if maybe you can use that instead of something else. Realia. So with realia, I mean objects, real life objects, okay? Bringing things from home, making sure that, I don't know, maybe you're talking about something and you bring it in. Bringing the outside in, remember, creates that connection, that language is used in a real life context. Puppets. So puppets, finger puppets are really, really good for very young learners. We can make them ourselves very easily with paper and some sellotape, or the puppets that come with the course book, or the puppets that you can find in any kind of shop that makes toys. Okay, so puppets, really useful. Why are puppets good? Because often when students speak to a puppet instead of a teacher, they feel more comfortable and confident, and they think it's silly, and silly means that they are happier and more confident to speak, and so they might produce more English. We can also work on gross and fine motor skills. So fine motor skills, remember, are your kind of pen holding techniques, colouring. Gross motor skills are how I sit myself, jumping, moving around, making sure that I don't bash into people. Mindfulness. This is a whole other talk, but with mindfulness and yoga, you can also bring these into the classroom. And there are some really, really great resources online that you can do with students in English as part of your routine for them. And here, synthetic phonics is so important for very young learners, and is something that you should be incorporating straight away if you're teaching them English. All right, so we're coming to the end now, and I'm going to conclude what we've been speaking about. So here are our key considerations before I ask if you have any questions. So very young learners, for the most part, enjoy being in class and learning, so make the most of it. We want to have them to have a positive experience of English so that as they grow up, they want to know more. Okay, don't forget to start implementing good learning habits from the beginning. Okay, good learning habits of learning languages, asking questions, using it actively. Keep the pace appropriate for the students. Remember, often fast-paced is the best, but if they're having a day where fast-paced just isn't working, slow it down. Use some settler activities. Use synthetic phonics activities on a regular basis, so making sure that skill of reading and writing and pen holding is always there and always being developed. And routines and repetition are your very best friends when teaching very young learners. Okay, so first of all, I would like to ask if there are any questions, and then at the end I'll give you my details if you need to ask any questions. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can write it in the chat. Any questions in the chat? Remember, you can write them in Spanish or in English. Let me know. Okay, so I have a question from Luisa here. What is downtime? Okay, so downtime, what I mean by this is, oh, hello from Ecuador and San Sebastian, very nice. Downtime here is when the students are not actively producing. Okay, so downtime here is when I'm talking about I'm not requiring anything from the students, so you're not responding to anything, you're not up and active in being energetic all the time. Downtime could be something they are sitting down. Maybe we're doing exercises in which they have to do maybe just pen holding or letter formation or some coloring or listening. Okay, it's more receptive than very, very active within the class, because they need that time to kind of recuperate and kind of understand what's happening. If it's too energetic and too production focused all the time, then the students will get tired of thinking that much, especially in the second language. They could then become kind of a little bit less engaged, and you could lose control of the class. So downtime here is just when they are not being energetic and productive. Any other questions? Okay, so if I could recommend any, I'll publish it. So if I could recommend any pages for resources for classes. Okay, it depends really on what you want. Okay, there are some great websites for flashcards. I also use Class Dojo for mindfulness and yoga activities. They have great videos on there. If you want, I'm going to give you my email at the end of the session, and if you want, you can email me and I will respond to you with a list of pages that I use. Okay, and I'll also write it. I'll write it in here, okay? Okay, so this is my email, so anything. Okay, so another question that I've got here is, I've got a question here. Is it important that the flashcards or the vocabulary has the word, the written word? Not all the time, especially for your kind of 3-year-olds. But as they get older, you really need to show the one with the other. So sometimes you get the flashcards with course books, you get the flashcard and the word card separately. So when I have it on the board, or if I'm showing it, then I'll show it with the word as well. If I'm doing classes on Zoom, I have the picture and then I have the word underneath. Even if the students don't understand the word, seeing it and making that visual connection is really important. So not all the time, because some flashcards don't come with the word, but make sure that if you have the word card, or if you're using it on the board, for example, underneath you write the word, and that it's not hidden from them all the time. Okay, or something like if they are doing phonics, I sometimes do it where, for colours, for example, they don't know how to read the whole word necessarily, but we've already done like the first letter. And so we're like, okay, this color is blue. And then you've got the word card blue. And I'm like, okay, can you find where the word that starts with b? Okay, and they find the word, and then we match that to the color. So we also do that. Okay, another question here. How can I make something touchy via Zoom? Okay, big question. With this on Zoom, there is the function of letting children control the screen. And I did try this with a Zoom class. So there are some things, if you have like a PowerPoint, for example, and you need them to write something, or often with the active teach for the course book, they can click something, you can give them momentarily the permission to click on the screen. So you say, okay, Andre, or whatever, click on, so I'm going to give you the permission. He then has the permission, and you can do that as well. So with this, or touchy in terms of you get them to do something at home. So they must find you something. They have to stand up. They have to sit down to react to what's on the screen. So you can do plenty of things with Zoom, which means they have to still interact with the material. So any kind of activity that they do at home with what they've got, finding things in their house, using everything they've got at their disposal, you can do this with Zoom as well. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I'm just going to show you the end of the PowerPoint now. Okay, so just a quick reminder at the end. All of these videos have come from a course that we run called the Young Learners course, and it's an online course, okay? This has 21 modules, 24 weeks, 2 written assignments, real class observations like the one you've seen today, downloadable material, articles, presentations. It also has industry experts commenting on how to teach English to children and teenagers. It's for ever so slightly older, so for 6 to 18, but still everything that you do on this course is completely relevant to the teaching of younger learners and very young learners. Okay, thank you very much for listening. So this is my email, as you've seen, Karen@London School. If you need to email me or want me to suggest any pages, I'm more than happy to do this. Email me and I will respond to you. Check out our online platform, london-school-online.com. We have a blog, we have webinars, lots and lots of things. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow me on LinkedIn if you would like as well. Okay, so have a look at that. Okay, and that is all for today. Okay, so please, I've put the my email address there. If you have any questions, please let me know. And thank you very, very much. Okay, so thank you very much. Any questions, please let me know. Gracias a todos y a todas. Y espero que sigas aprendiendo con las sesiones de hoy y mañana. Y que buena suerte con tus clases de inglés con los peques. Y por si tenéis alguna duda o alguna pregunta, no dudes en contactarme y estoy ya dispuesta para responder y enviaros páginas para recursos o lo que sea. Entonces, muchas gracias y que tengáis buen día, ¿qué día es? Martes, y buena semana. Muchísimas gracias.